started?
We're on.
This is the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners. It's taking place at the Tennessee Technology University, Prescott Hall, room 225, 1 William L. Jones Drive, Cookeville, Tennessee. And notice of this board meeting was posted on the board website on September 30th, 2013. Can we have a roll call, please?
Susan Ballard.
Here.
Hal Balthrop.
Here.
Wilson Borden.
Here.
Robert Campbell.
Here.
Jerome Headley.
Here.
Philip Lamb.
Here.
Bill Lockwood.
Here.
Rick Thompson. Frank Wagster. Ricky Versailles.
Here.
Lauren Reinbold. Stephen King. You have a quorum.
Well, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge guests. We have, I guess, an architect. You just state your name.
Clemo with Upson Design Group.
Okay. Nathan?
Nathan Ridley with Landscape Architects.
Candy?
Candy Toller with 2 engineering associations.
Is there any announcements? Seeing none. Review agenda for changes and or additions. Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda. Now we'll go to the open forum, and I think would you like to ask your questions?
Sure. First of all, thank you for your service, everybody on this licensure board. As a 35-year practicing architect, I know what you go through, and I appreciate it. There's a little uniqueness to you being here. My home is close to here, so this is my first opportunity to come before the board. I do not want to come under other circumstances. What I did have is when we heard this announcement, several of the people in the office said, gee, we ought to ask the questions that we keep asking ourselves internally all the time. And they deal with Tennessee Code Annotated's law currently that states that municipalities or any public organization, while soliciting the services of an AE, is not supposed to be soliciting fee as a part of the RFQ request. We find that often is not adhered to, and we've been trying to tell the people that we work with that there is a rule that way and why the rule is there, but we have trouble even understanding what our rules of action are and when we would face disciplinary action. Is simply the mention of our fee services in casual conversation before being selected a violation of your codes and ethics? Question. The second question associated with that would be if we do participate and we are asked to send an RFQ response and part of that question involves fee, are we in violation? What is the punishment in the event that we do give a fee as part of an RFQ response? And then what happens if in an interview process it's casually asked? How should we respond when we're going through an interview process with a client and we open it up to question and answer, and the first question out of their mouth is, well, what's your fee? And what our question is of you all is, what is the penalty? What should the response be? And associated with all of this, what is being done to advise these entities, the public entities, of the rule and how they should act? And I just open it as a question. And I don't know whether you want to take it up as an answer right now or whether just leave it on the table.
Do you have a card?
I do.
Would you give that to Wanda there just so she can put it on the record?
Okay.
Right.
It's a board meeting, bro.
Go ahead. And you want to try to answer that, or?
No. I'm just acknowledging my thanks for requesting that he submit his business card.
Okay.
Yeah, that is.
I have a name like that.
Do we want to answer the question or send him a letter?
You're welcome to answer now if you prefer.
Well, just to give him some, this is a topic that has been discussed during this session. The engineering societies that are represented here are certainly interested, as well as the AIA group. And so as a result of these meetings, we'll be coming forward, and John can maybe elaborate a little more with specific details on this topic as it relates to any breach of law on the individual or firms that are party to such occurrences. And we have also drafted some language that will be communicated to procurement or purchasing agents throughout the state. But we will rely, I'm sure, on registrants to let us know if they're aware of particular locations that include pay as part of the selection process. I think the board, as well as the technical societies, will assist, I think, in at least raising the consciousness of that being problematic and contrary to law. So I don't know if we want to get into any specifics today, because again, some of this is still in kind of a draft format, but we are working on it.
Well, in that I've given you a card, if there's any questions of an operating practitioner and the practicality of that, we'd be happy to be part of any committee that is looking at that. I had a second question that's totally unrelated, but something that has occurred here in our practice for the past 30 years, a misunderstanding of the $25,000 rule and where a registrant is required to be employed by municipalities. Most recently, well, for a long time, nobody really knew that or adhered to it much at all. And then as they begin to understand it and adhere to it, there are now people that I have great respect for that are going to the places like the Department of Education, and in a Department of Education seminar they're being told that, oh no, re-roofing doesn't fit under this $25,000, or no, if you're just replacing a chiller for a chiller and it's a $100,000 chiller, you're not required to. And I don't know where the misconception comes from, but I just wanted to advise the board that again, the municipalities and public vendors are not fully understanding that there's a $25,000 rule. Obviously, there's a whole different discussion whether $25,000 is the right figure or not. But there seems to be a misunderstanding as to maintenance projects or there's some way that no, you don't need to have a designer. The specific of that happens to be re-roofing occurring a lot. And the state of Tennessee Department of Education meeting, I can't quote the meeting, but it was stated that way, and is again a concern on our part as to that compliance. Again, I don't know if that's a subject that y'all are addressing regularly, but one we wanted to ask about. Any update on that?
Do you want to read the rule or the regulation?
Well, yeah, he's referring to the law. It's TCA, if I can find it just off the top of my head. Yeah. No, actually, it's not. It's in a different portion of the statute. It's TCA 622107. Nothing in this section shall be held to apply to a public work if the contemplated expenditure does not, for the complete project, does not exceed $25,000, and the work does not alter the structural, mechanical, or electrical system of the project. And then there's an additional section that was added recently by the legislature about state parks, where the limit is $100,000, but that only applies to state parks. So that's what he's referring to. It gets more complicated than that, because you've also got to consider other policies of the board. There's the seal exemptions clarification policy, which has a section on roof maintenance and repair that has to be considered when you're interpreting that particular statute. And that policy says, let me turn to that. Normal maintenance or repair of an existing roof where the weight, drainage, fire protection, and other code-related requirements of the original design are not changed or compromised, that in those circumstances a design professional is not required unless an awarding authority deems it necessary. So I think that policy has to be considered when you're
Would that
interpreting
supersede the
other-
25,000 then?
Basically, I think that exempts, if you're doing a roof, just a roof replacement, then the dollar value doesn't have any bearing on it if it's not changing the structural character of the structure or the fire proofing or codes.
What's the number on that, just from my, that you just read?
It's the seal exemptions clarification policy,
Okay.
which is under policies on our website. Yeah.
Okay.
And in the reference manual as well.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll get you a letter with that
Yeah.
information on it.
You don't need to be too official, I'm just here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, thank you, sir.
Nathan, is there anything? We're kind of in the open forum. Okay. Consent agenda?
Yes, behind tab 12 in your books, you have the minutes from the August board meeting for your review and approval.
I move the minutes of the August 14th meeting be approved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes to accept the minutes.
Also behind the minutes, you have the staff complaint report. These are situations in which the discipline in another jurisdiction was less than a suspension or revocation, so in accordance with board policy, we issued a letter of caution and recommend closure. You can vote on these as a group.
Do we have to read them into the record? Or
No,
we can just,
no.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a motion and a second to accept the staff complaint reports? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Professional society reports.
Okay, where do I go? Should I just stay here?
You can come over where Mr. Clemo was, or wherever you're from.
Okay.
I think the microphone should pick you up pretty well.
On a chair?
It's okay. I'm Candy Toller, representing the American Council of Engineering Companies of Tennessee and the Tennessee Society of Professional Engineers. Thank you, Susan. And I want to thank members of the board, specifically the engineers, who came to our annual meeting last month to talk about the very questions you raised, Derek, on qualifications-based selection. I think we probably talked about that for the entire hour. And thank you, John, and Hal and Robert, and is anybody else there supporting him? Anyway, thank you. We had over 400 participants at our annual meeting. And since your last meeting in August, there has been a lot of email traffic and letters and things about qualifications-based selection. A lot of requests have gone out, and I think in the frequently asked questions that you worked on yesterday, some of our questions will be answered. Specifically, whether separate envelopes is acceptable and whether planning is considered engineering. You know that they're looking for a state architect even now, and Ashley Cates is not able to be here. Ashley Kate. No, it's Cates.
Cates.
Yeah, it's got the S on the end. Is not able to be here. She had another commitment, but she's looking forward to coming to your meeting in November. And Ashley and I and the contractors have been meeting with the state architect to talk about design build, and Ricky's been involved in some of that, and what kinds of projects are appropriate for design build. And we've also got things going on about underground utility damage prevention. The legislature might not be in session, but there are lots of government advocacy issues. And Don's not here for me to say thank you, but I wanted to acknowledge that he gave us early warning that the interior designers were not going to be seeking a Practice Act next year. Let's see. Oh, we're having our Engineering Excellence Awards event on March the 11th. And so if any of you have been working with engineers on projects and you think, or any of you engineers have projects that are interesting, specifically, you know, there's something real innovative about them, I hope that you will enter them. That's about all, unless you have any questions. The State Building Commission is still looking for a state architect. I think they had a deadline of last Friday for more resumes to be submitted. I don't know where they are on that now.
Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. When is, typically you have Engineers Day on the Hill
Engineers
there.
Day on the
What
Hill.
is your schedule for that week so that everybody knows?
March 11th, we'll have the legislative reception on March 10th, and Engineers Day on the Hill on March 11th, and the banquet March 11th. And then I'll have board meetings before that and after that, which is why I call it March Madness. Engineering style March Madness, yes.
Anything else for Candy? Thank you very much.
We'll look forward to seeing the official version of the frequently asked questions so that I can distribute them to engineers.
Okay. Nathan?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Nathan Ridley. I represent the Tennessee chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. We've been busy. We had our annual conference in Memphis on September 26th and 27th. Had a good turnout. Saw some beautiful properties and projects there in the city and in Shelby County. Several of our leadership folks are based in Shelby County, so it makes it a little easier. Our executive committee meeting will be on December the 7th. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but I know our annual meeting is a big deal. That's sort of the planning for our next year. Our president-elect is going to be Alan Jones. Excuse me, I've got Dale Allen on my mind. I've got a conference call with him. He's another lawyer. Alan Jones, I believe, of Large Wagner in the Chattanooga office, is going to be our president-elect. Again, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's hard to recruit our presidents-elect because they have to plan the next conference. So we're Alan has jumped up to do that, so we're very excited about that. The UT program is going well. They have a good class this fall. On the legislative front, the legislature, I think y'all need to be prepared, will be fast and furious again, and they will commence business on January the 14th, second Tuesday, as they're constitutionally required to do, and they'll be done by the middle of April. So it's going to go really quick. So when Candy says a lot of legislative activity is going on now, it really is. Our group has also wrestled with the issue this gentleman raised, and I ponder reaching out to, there are trade associations just like there are for architects and engineers and landscape architects and interior designers for local government. There's the County Services Organization and the Tennessee Municipal League. And I think it might be worth reaching out to them on that issue as well to get the word out that professional services are different from buying a box of pencils. So it's a classic case of you get what you pay for, and you don't have a lot of conversation about that. I think for our group, that's going to be, we've had a good year this year. Our new executive director, and y'all appreciate good staff. We have a new executive director. I guess she's in this will be her third year. And we've developed a rhythm about our annual, trade associations have an annual cycle, just like y'all do. And we've gotten very comfortable with Ms. Kate Horton out of Memphis, who works for the Memphis Planning Office. So the group's doing well. Employment's back up. The numbers of the association have still not reached their 2007 membership numbers. So we say we're recovering, and we are, that work is better to come by now, public entities as well as private, but still not quite back from a trade association perspective, just on pure membership numbers, which is kind of interesting to me. Anyway, thank y'all again for the opportunity. We look forward to working with y'all again.
Thank you, Nathan. Any questions for Nathan? Let's move on to the legal case report. Oh, I'm sorry.
I had an email from Ashley Cates of AIA Tennessee, just a quick report from her that she wanted me to present to you. She said the AIA 2013 convention was very successful. They had over 300 architects and 83 vendors in attendance, and they had a ceremony, a luncheon to recognize the newly licensed architects, which we helped with. I think Frank was there as well as myself. She's pleased with how well local governments are becoming acquainted with the new rule regarding QBS, and said that AIA is available to assist in those education efforts. And they are continuing to work with the Office of State Architect, reviewing and modernizing contracts, procedural documents, and project delivery methods, and also helping the State Building Commission in promoting the open state architect position, which Candy referred to earlier. And that's it from Ashley.
Well, thank you. Now we can move into legal. Oh, wait a minute, excuse me. Don, do you want to, we're on professional. Just in time. We're about to end up.
I can stand right here, or I'm
Yes.
just here.
Hello again. Hello again, everybody. Comedian causing destruction. Sorry, I had to go on the phone.
Some clients have
It was broken beforehand.
Okay, good. Don Baltimore, representing Tennessee Interior Design Coalition, and we really have nothing to report. We've had one of our members of the American Society of Interior Designers Tennessee chapter recently had its statewide convention that was well attended with its continuing education programs. And then we really have nothing major for this session of the General Assembly other than to support what our fellow design professions are interested in.
Well, thank you. Good time.
Yes.
Now, can we go to the legal case reports?
Okay.
Robert, you're up.
That's at tab 13. And this is the first time I really ever remember we don't have any new cases. The whole thing is just revisiting some old matters. So we'll just get right into it. Number one is 2013-002051, and this was presented in our February meeting, and it's a privilege tax matter. Pretty routine. This person was 2 years delinquent, and based on that, the board approved a consent order to suspend until compliant. Well, since that time, they've come within 1 year delinquency. They haven't paid it all off, but they're now out of disciplinary zone, which requires at least 2 years. So this person has become compliant. So recommend rescind the previous consent order and close the case with a letter of warning.
Do I have a motion or
So moved.
second? Does anybody?
Second.
So I have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation to rescind the consent order and close the case with a letter of warning. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, approved.
Okay, number
Passes.
Number 2, 2013-002091. This is another February privilege tax matter. This person was 3 years delinquent. And once again, based on that, the board approved a consent order to suspend until compliant, and this person has become compliant. Paid everything up, provided proof. So I recommend that we rescind the consent order and close the case with a letter of warning.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve the staff's recommendation. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, number 3 is a little different. This was presented at our June meeting, and this, I'll just go ahead and read this into the record. The complaint alleges a respondent, an unlicensed company, advertised, provided, or is providing engineering services in the form of roof inspections and consultation, and advertises construction engineering services in violation of our statute. And this is evidenced by the respondent's website, vehicles, their clothing, and other business articles that bear the appellation engineering. Haven't been able to get in touch with them, and based on that, you approved a cease and desist and a formal hearing, $1,000 civil penalty to settle the case. Well, since that time, we still haven't been able to contact them by certified mail, and they're not in Tennessee, so we can't send anybody out there. There's no evidence that the respondent has ever actually been active in Tennessee, and the respondent's native state is considering disciplinary action, haven't done anything yet. Should this occur, the board may obtain assistance in any disciplinary action of its own. So, really the only thing we can do is wait for the other state to do something and maybe get some help there. So, the recommendation is to rescind the consent order, close the case with authority to reopen the matter if new relevant information arises.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in
Mr.
favor?
Chair. Okay. Can John remind everyone, just briefly, what the process is for your review on what frequency of registrants or firms, if they have activity in other jurisdictions? How is our board typically made aware of such?
If they're
activity?
disciplined in other jurisdictions?
Yes.
All through the, in this case, it would be the NCEES disciplinary database. That's how we would be advised of it.
And you check that?
Yeah, we check it monthly.
Monthly,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to remind everyone of that.
I think we actually communicated with.
So I have a motion. Did I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, number 4 is 2013-012991. This is sort of an appeal. We visited this matter on August 14th at our board meeting, and this person has had a romp through the disciplinary process. So I'll go ahead and read this into the record because it's a little lengthy. The complaint alleges the respondent, a licensed engineer, committed misconduct by being formally disciplined in other jurisdictions. Specifically, the respondent's registration was suspended in one jurisdiction by being placed on 5-year probation. While this was effective, another jurisdiction found the respondent's practice within its own borders did not comply with its minimum standards and imposed a civil penalty due to the fact that the respondent was already on probation in the original jurisdiction. This formal discipline resulted in the original jurisdiction demanding a review of the subsequent formal discipline in the other place. The respondent was unable to participate in the hearing and was subsequently revoked, which the respondent is appealing. Because of this, a third jurisdiction imposed a civil penalty and suspended the respondent for 2 years effective July 10. No complaint history in Tennessee for this respondent. Hadn't done anything here. The respondent asked because of his business that the action taken by Tennessee be limited to the extent of the respondent's remaining suspensions. Okay, based on this, the board authorized a formal hearing with authority to settle for a suspension that expired upon successful completion of all mandated disciplinary actions in the jurisdictions where their suspensions active, and a requirement to take and pass the board's law and rule exam. Well, after he got all this material, we got a written response back. The respondent made a written appeal to the board to reduce the suspension to probation due to the fact that some of the projects in progress are located in Tennessee, and the suspension would be terminal to the respondent's business. So we said we'd bring that back to the board and see what you had to say about that. So I recommend that we rescind the previous consent order, authorize a formal hearing with authority to settle for probation to expire upon the successful completion of all mandated actions, and a requirement to take and pass the board's law and rule exam. Same discipline, just taking away suspension, replacing it with probation.
Do I have any discussion on that?
Question for Rob. Typically, when other states have discipline, we have done whatever the other state did.
Yeah, but no worse than that.
That's correct. But I mean, and that's, I don't want to use the word common courtesy, but it's a consistency is really what it is, because they do the same with if we have similar situations, a violator in Tennessee is also registered in their state. So I think our course of action seemed to be, although I understand his situation, seem to be consistent with what we've done in the past.
Yeah, that's why I recommended that to begin with. And I don't have a personal opinion about this, but I said I would bring it back.
to us. Yes, sir.
He's never done anything here in his practice in Tennessee that would offend our minimum standards. So that's a plus. So I didn't have any problem bringing it back to you. But other than that, I don't really have an opinion about it. And you're correct, which is why the first recommendation was what it was. On the other hand, I can see how he would be sensitive to losing his license in Tennessee as well if he has projects here. So,
Do I have,
Move to approve the recommendation.
Second.
second? So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this matter? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We have one dissenting, but still pass.
that's it for me.
Next on the agenda is the director's report. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll first give you an oral report regarding National Council meetings. Hal Balthrop, Ricky Versailles, Rob, and I attended the NCAAS annual meeting in San Antonio, Texas on August 21st through the 24th. And there's a report on that meeting behind tab 5 in your books. Bill Lockwood and I attended the CLARB annual meeting in Minneapolis on September 26th through the 28th. There's also a report in your books behind tab 2 on that meeting. And Susan Ballard and I were just approved this week, I believe it was, to attend the CIDQ annual meeting in Las Vegas, Nevada on November 8th and 9th. But no gambling will occur this week.
With state funds.
Sure. Yeah, with state funds, correct. Yes.
None of mine either.
Other meetings, Hal Balthrop and I, Candy referred to this, assisted by Robert Campbell and Stephen King was also in attendance, spoke at the TSPE ACEC Tennessee ASCE Tennessee annual meeting on Friday. That's a lot of acronyms. On Friday, September 13th in Murfreesboro, and we did address QBS and some other issues at that meeting. I'm scheduled to speak at a Memphis Light, Gas, and Water seminar in Memphis on December 10th regarding ethics for registrants. And in regard to that, you may recall that we are required to seek approval from the board in advance of speaking engagements and the like for authorization to attend these events and to seek travel reimbursement. So I would request a motion in that regard at this time.
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a comment?
Is that a motion?
That was a motion. Motion and second to approve their travel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Your travel has been approved.
Thank you very much, yes. Administrative issues, Joyce Schrum has returned to work after an extended medical leave, so we are once again fully staffed, glad to report. The engineer intern and engineer application instructions and forms have been modified to accommodate computer-based testing and changes to the exam scheduling and score reporting processes associated with that. Notifications of these changes will be sent to all the deans with the October 2013 exam results, and they will be asked to share the information with their students and faculty. Progress on the system to replace our current licensing system, which we refer to as RBS, the regulatory board's system, continues. At this point, the vendor is still working on conversion of the old data, and the new system should be implemented by the end of 2014, if not sooner. That's the approximate target date for it. And this system will eventually be utilized for online applications. Also report that we have been told that the internet convenience fee that you pay when you renew online presently, which is $2, which is currently charged for all online transactions, will be eliminated with the new system. That's what we're being promised, that convenience fee is going to be eliminated, and we will be allowed to absorb the 2% credit card fee rather than passing this cost on to the registrant. So instead of I think right now if you renew online, you pay like it's $144 and something because of the convenience fee and the credit card fees associated with that. So I'm assuming when this new system is implemented, it may require some rule changes. I'm not sure what's involved with it, but we'll be able to absorb that, so the registrant will only pay $140, which will have a small effect, obviously, on our bottom line, but probably not a tremendous amount. Also, the rules that were adopted at the August meeting have been submitted to the Attorney General for review. We did receive them back this week with some comments and suggested revisions, so Rob will be working on those diligently, I'm sure, to get those resubmitted to the AG, but obviously that'll slow down implementation of those rules somewhat, but hopefully they'll take effect sometime early next year. This is the plan. Also behind tab 14, you have some other reports which we referred to yesterday in the committee meetings already, but we do have some complaint data, as well as licensing data, the number of registrants, which Susan may point this out, still contains an error in the number of interior designers for June the 5th, 2013. It should be 453, not 253. That continues to pop up.
Because I cut it.
Again, that's Wanda's fault. Anyways, yeah, we didn't have a sudden jump of like over 200 interior designer applicants between June and August. That's just an error. And we continue to perform well in processing complaints. The percent on time in the last 18 months is at 98.72%. So we're doing well, meeting the department's goals and objectives for processing complaints. And also, you do have financial data behind tab 9 that was reviewed yesterday by the Finance Committee. That is just for your information. I think we discussed it some yesterday, but if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to address those. If not, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just one point of information on the financial report. John, you had made a correction on under expenses.
Yeah, that not in the actual report, but just in the summary of the report. Yeah. The second bullet under expenses says in-state travel. That's actually employee benefits is what it should say. Yeah. But the spreadsheets are correct. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? Unfinished business?
That's behind tab 15. These are the action items. And I'm happy to report that they have all been completed or they're in process. The only exception, I suppose this is in process, would be Rick's article about QBS, right. But that's in process.
It's in process due to the rule change and the activity we've had on that, trying to weigh out what that means to the board, to the state.
Right.
So, yeah, exactly.
And also behind tab 3, you have the mutual recognition agreement and letter of undertaking, which was initiated by NCARB to establish mutual recognition between Canada and the U.S. Again, that was discussed extensively yesterday by both the Architect Committee and the Law and Rules Committee. Mr. Thompson, did you want to summarize that?
Well, yes, we discussed this in regard to what we are allowed to do from the state's perspective, and We are troubled by some of the language in the letter, that we may not be able to sign that letter because it's against state law rules that we have, that we can't just openly accept the statement that we will not request any additional information from Canadian applicants. We reserve that right to make sure that they meet our criteria, and John is going to communicate with NCARB regarding that, and hopefully we'll get an amended letter to sign. Other than that, you know, we're on board with the CALA NCARB agreement, other than what doesn't allow, what we can't do legally from a state perspective. So that's it.
Anything else, John? New business?
Behind tab 2, you have the report on the CLAR annual meeting, which Bill Lockwood and I attended. A very, very good meeting. I'll say probably the best that I've attended. We did have a good strategic planning session, which assisted us in our own planning session yesterday. It was announced that Alberta is now the 52nd member of CLAR. They do have Canadian members like CIDQ, unlike NCARB and NCAAS. So there are a few Canadian provinces. So Alberta is now one of the members of CLAR. And we did pass some bylaw changes to remove references to boards conducting exams, and exams being graded by individuals because their exam is completely computer-based now, so there's no more grading sessions but with individuals. And also just point out that there will be no spring meeting next year. We'll get to this when we review the travel plan for 2014. CLARB is going to make greater use of webcast and virtual meetings, and eliminate the spring meeting, and also add a day to the annual meeting to sort of compensate for that, so that we have more time face-to-face with members from other states.
Sounds good.
Unless you have anything to add, Bill.
That's good. The NCAAS annual meeting?
Behind tab 5, we have the report on the NCAAS meeting in San Antonio. We did discuss this in the engineer committee meeting. I think pretty much everybody was in attendance at that meeting to hear the report, so right after lunch. So if you have any questions about that, we can entertain those. But otherwise, you have the written report.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay.
Hey, John, on the webinar for educator, how are they reaching out to this educator about regarding the computer-based testing?
Okay.
How did they do it? I mean, did they just announce it to the school, or did they personally write it?
For the webinar,
Yeah.
yeah, they sent out invitations to all of the deans and program directors at the various accredited schools, and also they did mail information to them. Just I think with a couple of weeks ago, they actually mailed information to all the deans to share with their programs.
Is there a way we could poll the Dean of Tennessee here that they really, how many of them really did attend the webinar to understand that computer-based testing for FE? Is that even a possibility to ask the question?
Well, sure, we can ask. Yeah, we're going to provide information to them as well in
Because I want
case
to
they
make sure
didn't
that our
attend.
people are covered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions on that? I guess next on the agenda is the 2014 proposal.
Right, that's behind tab 16 in your books. Our proposed travel plan for next calendar year. We do have mentioned this yesterday, a member board administrators forum with NCAAS in Scottsdale in February. No CLARB spring meeting this year, unlike previous years, but we do have an NCARB spring meeting. That's now, I think they're referring to it as like the super regional meeting. used to, they would have 2 to 3 regional meetings at different locations. Each year, as part of a pilot project, NCARB is combining all the regional meetings into one super regional meeting, and that's going to take place next year in San Antonio. For that, we are requesting that all 3 architect members attend. 2 of them will be funded by NCARB, and then 2, myself and an architect member, will be funded by the state. And with NCARB, of course, we can take their travel funding because we don't have a contract with them for other services. There is an educators conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, scheduled for March of next year. And in the past, we've often sent 1 architect member. I don't think anybody attended the last one. I don't recall where that was now. It may have been in Georgia. Are there any architects interested in attending that? I mean, we could remove that if there's... No, you would be interested? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we ought. It would be good for us to send at least 1 representative to that meeting. Okay.
You may.
Okay. We have a regional meeting for NCAAS in Charleston. For the April meeting, we're still going to be under a contract with NCAAS, so there's still going to be restrictions on any funding. I'm not even positive if they normally fund anybody for the regional meetings. I can't recall off the top of my head, but for that we would still do, as we've done in the past, 2 board members, Rob and myself, so 4 representatives attending that meeting. But for the annual meeting in Seattle in August, we're going to try to request for all 6 engineers to attend that meeting, the 6 board members, 3 board members, 3 associates, myself, and legal counsel, for a total of 8, with 2 being paid by NCAAS. At the request of the engineers, we want to try to have more representation at those meetings. For that meeting, we'll be able to accept NCAAS funding because there will be no more contract at that point, because all exam fees are going to be paid directly by the candidates to NCAAS, instead of us collecting those fees and then paying them to NCAAS through an invoice. Also, there's the NCARB annual in Philadelphia. All the architects again attending that meeting. CLARB annual meeting. In the past, we've only sent Bill and myself typically to those meetings, just 2 representatives. I had thought, it might be a good idea to send perhaps another representative to that meeting. Could be a public member, could be an engineer or an architect potentially that serves on the Landscape Architect Committee. Be at your discretion, but if anyone's interested in attending that, we could include that in the budget at least for funding. Yeah. Also, our board meeting and planning session in October next year, we're planning on Montgomery Bell State Park, subject to approval. That will include a meeting with deans as well. Not just engineering, but architecture, landscape, etc. And then we have the, I should say CIDQ annual meeting, not NCIDQ, which we're not sure of the location, I don't believe at this point. But
Well, they changed it this year anyway, so.
yeah. So we'll see how that develops. It could be a virtual meeting. We don't know at this point. They've done those in the past, so we would assume face-to-face. So the total would be $65,000, $35,600 being out of state. Of course, that's just an estimate, naturally. So I would submit this for the board's approval.
Do I have any questions for the director? Do I have a motion?
I shall move, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a second? So I have a motion and a second to approve the estimated travel cost for next year, 2014. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Yes, sir.
John, question, this upcoming board meeting, we are moving back to Wednesday, Thursday, correct?
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
That was approved at last meeting.
I think we're going to be first week of December.
Yeah, it is.
And then
First
it's
week.
our traditional lunch hosted by our
Well,
fearless leader.
it's been planned by Alton and Howell, I think, in the past, but correct. Usually we do a staff lunch at the December meeting.
All right, clarification, the December board meeting, or are we waiting until January the 14th when January 2014 when we change our schedule?
No, it starts with December. That was approved at the
So we will
August
meet
meeting.
the committees on Wednesday afternoon and the board on Thursday morning
The engineer committee on Wednesday, and then the board meeting Thursday morning.
at
Right.
8:30 or something.
Probably 9, yeah.
Then followed by a luncheon.
Right, yeah, that's
Yes, sir.
The other question is, Rob, do you anticipate any hearings?
I don't think we're gonna have any hearings. I've talked to our litigator, and I don't think anything's gonna be ready for December.
Yeah.
Okay. Just looking
Whenever
at-
we have hearings come up, we'll probably have to adjust the schedule.
Yeah.
Because especially there's a couple of them that are fairly involved. It might take at least a day, just the hearing. Don't worry, you'll know well before.
That's fine, I just want to make sure that I mean, that's a couple months out, I mean, I know, but it helps to know that we got that day free or not, so.
No, everything's just one day or 2 days for engineers.
Yeah.
Back to normal.
Application examination deadline dates.
That's behind tab 17. This list is greatly reduced from previous years because it's only for the PE exam. Because with FE going to CBT, computer-based testing, we're no longer going to have set deadline dates and exam dates for the fundamentals exam, but we still do for the principles and practice of engineering. So would recommend approval of these dates, consistent with what we've had in the past.
Do we need a motion on this? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Revised civil penalty guidelines.
That's behind tab 18. As I mentioned yesterday, we've done some updating on the civil penalty schedule, the guidelines, in light of some recent rule changes. Also, it required much more extensive revision than I thought, because I had forgotten that we recently adopted a civil penalty schedule for interior designers, which we did not have until I think it was the rulemaking prior to the one we had in August. So that required some substantial revision. And we did make some changes to it where we did have estimated administrative cost on there, which that's sort of assessed separately from the civil penalties. So I don't know that was really necessary to be included on this particular chart. And we also took out the history of what was assessed previously, which I think was calculated from 1998 to 2009 when the schedule was originally drafted, because that information's outdated and kind of misleading, because frequently it groups multiple violations together. So the historical data was really not that helpful, I don't think. So we've kind of shortened it a little bit, abbreviated it somewhat. And again, we added some, mainly the interior designers were added to this list. And for some of them, you'll notice there's a different range, penalty range, like on page 3. That's what jumps out at me. Yeah, that's the first occurrence of it. Some of them you'll see, like fraud or deceit in obtaining a certificate of registration. It'll show a range of $250 to $1,000, and then in parentheses, AELA, that's architects, engineers, landscape architects. That's from chapter 2 of the rules. And then it'll show $500 to $1,000 for RID, registered interior designers. That's from chapter 4. With the interior designers, we didn't have any penalties less than $500 per violation, in accordance with the board's expressed desire in the past. So that's why you'll see some variation like that between what's the range allowed for architects, engineers, and landscape architects versus interior designers. There's some differences there.
Question. Mr. Chairman.
And I don't know that you necessarily need a motion to adopt it, do they, Rob? But it's just a guideline to help you.
You know, we have been, we have been pretty consistent in making people take the law and rule test. I think we should capture that in this table.
Yeah.
Well, it is mentioned on the first page, the bottom of the page. I think we actually added that in light of a rule that was recently added. In addition to a civil penalty, the board may require passage of a law and rules exam, completion of additional continuing education hours, or assignment of a probationary period. And then it references the rules there, so it is referenced. Because we could put that after all of them.
Right. Is it may a stronger word or shall is a stronger word? I think shall is a stronger word.
Well, if you put shall, that means you're obligated to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Want to have a little bit of discretion.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Ricky?
John, question, looking at that same table that item you looked at as an example, where it has a penalty range of 250 to 1,000 for architects and engineers, landscape architects, and then the 3 columns after that. Could you just give a real brief explanation of each of those columns? I don't know that I've ever heard that, and everybody else may know it, but just.
Well, you mean the mitigating factors? Yeah, that refers to the first page. If you feel that there are mitigating factors that should reduce the penalty to the minimum amount, then I think the board has said when we discussed it in 2009 that they would prefer, in general, to not assess a penalty less than $500. You have the discretion to do so, of course, but generally not less than $500 because anything less is not a significant economic deterrent. It doesn't have a lot of impact.
Should the 250 match the 500?
Not necessarily.
In the penalty range?
You have that range,
okay,
but the rules don't specify a certain amount, so you have discretion there.
so even though what you said about 500 being the lowest, we could still have a penalty of 250?
Yeah, you could.
Okay.
Yeah, the rules are the authority, not the guidelines. Right?
Yeah, this is just to keep us from being arbitrary.
Yeah.
And we looked at other states to see what they're see if we're way off, make sure we're consistent with other jurisdictions.
Right. Yeah, this is just a tool to assist you.
It's to keep us in line with the rest of the country and make sure everybody is assessed essentially the same penalty for the same offense.
Is it supposed to cover everything, or is it just a general overview?
No, it's comprehensive, yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple things missing.
Okay.
So, in regards to the interior design case.
Okay.
So.
We can have them.
Yeah, feel free to, you can send them to me, we can have them.
And I'm sorry I don't know this, but is this on the website or will it be on the website?
No.
No.
And this is for us.
Yeah,
okay.
It's an internal
Is there any
document.
reason that it cannot be on the website? Because
Well,
I often get asked questions and I prefer to refer question askers to the source if I can.
It's a
Is there a
tool for
reason
us.
this shouldn't be posted?
Yeah, it's something that we use internally to assess penalties. If we publish it, people are going to expect that, it's going to, well, you did this to me and did that to somebody else, because just by looking at it, you can't tell what the specifics of the probable cause case is. And sometimes that'll make a difference. You might make it more than this or less than this. And to the untrained eye, they're just going to think that we just picked that number.
Well, but on the first page of this, I think it's a good representation and accurate, but it says the following amounts are guidelines only and may be raised or lower.
Yes.
I mean, so it's not, we're admitting that this is not a fixed schedule, but one that's used as a guide. So I interpret that as meaning that there is latitude within the guide.
Yes.
And I don't see it as a problem to post. Everything we do is public record anyway. So if someone asked me, hey, do you have a guideline, I would have to say yes, and we would have to reveal it or give them a copy of it. I would
If they ask for it.
But I mean, why wouldn't we want it public? Is it, why are we, I really don't expect there would be much question about it, unless someone was penalized, and then they might review it and then ask that question. But the answer to that question is, this is a guide, and it's on a case-by-case basis. If someone feels like their penalty is more severe or egregious, but they still have an appeal process anyway, right? Yeah. So I would like to see us post it, unless others feel, and with all due respect, Rob,
it keeps us in control of how we assess penalties, rather than have it scrutinized by the public. They're going to try to weigh in.
Shouldn't we answer to our public if they have questions? I mean, why?
Well, the public doesn't assign penalties, we do.
I understand.
This is how we conduct our business, and having the public involved in it might be great and all that, but we are the regulatory agency.
I'm not soliciting public input on the assessment of penalties, but I'm only suggesting that they be aware that we have a guideline. I think having the guideline is smart, first of all, and then secondly, I think it protects us from any accusation of arbitrary administration of our duties. I don't see it as a problem personally, but I'm interested if
but it could potentially be used by less scrupulous individuals to calculate,
business model.
Yeah, they might factor that into the cost of doing business. Well, I'm going to violate this rule in anticipation that the penalty is going to be a certain amount.
That's it.
Yeah. That's one of my concerns. But I've heard that expressed by other states that use schedules. Nevada has a schedule that I kind of used as the model for this one, and theirs is not public. They don't publicize it largely for that reason, because they don't want registrants using it to try to calculate what their potential fee might be for violating a rule. But
so
cost of doing business.
Okay. Well, if no one else feels compelled by that, then I'll leave it alone. But I just don't see it as a problem. So.
Robert's got it.
Al, I think that's an admirable thing, but I thought the same thing as we started the discussion about what John said. I think the people that violate have a tendency to break the rules anyway, and I think some of them would make that value judgment that I've got a job with X number of fee, I know I can get that, it's only going to cost me $1,000. And so I would rather leave and this is the wrong word, a little bit of mystery to it, so that we have a little bit of that when they come in here and go, well, I don't know how much they're going to hit me with. That may be more of a deterrent. But I do think we ought to, and maybe we do on the website, have something that says, something maybe that explains the civil penalty process a little bit more, that the board weighs mitigating factors, that we are consistent with other jurisdictions, that it's weighed per violation, and there may be something like that on there. But I think if we had that kind of thing, I think it does they understand what they're doing, but I don't want them to make a quid pro quo analysis of what their potential action would be. So that would be my comment.
John?
Oh, you're recognizing me, I'm sorry. Yes, I was going to point out in response to Susan's question, a little clarification. It's not totally comprehensive, because it's based on the rules allowing the board to assess civil penalties and establishing the range of penalties. So I think there are potentially some violations in the statute.
I didn't see the ethics.
They're not specifically referenced. Yeah, they're not specifically referenced in the civil penalty schedule in the rules. So that may be why some sections don't appear on here, because they're not included in the civil penalty rule. So that may be part of the explanation for that. There may be some potential violations that don't appear on here, because they're not referenced in the rules.
Misconduct is in here, but from the ethics standpoint, which is what we penalized her for, to me, we need to have it in writing.
Yeah. Oh, the case about not having the client's permission?
Right.
Yeah, I think that is included, but we'll look at that after.
I just skimmed it again, I didn't see it.
Yeah,
so.
we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Anyways.
Rick, just one more item on that. I mean, I see a range in the civil penalties section of the rules now that registrants can look in here, and that's on the website. And I think that's basically this information here without the mitigating factors and aggravating factors. So that, I think they have a basis already that's published and available that we can point them to if we get the question.
Okay. Thank you.
For those of y'all getting coffee, I just want to tell you that the injection molding wasn't quite perfect on this batch, and there's some of them have a hole in the bottom. So look into it before you get coffee.
So you're the one that caused the spill of the.
I admit it, but I did it. But it wasn't on purpose.
There was no action required on that, right, John?
No vote.
Mr. Chairman, can I request for a 5 minutes recession?
Yeah, we can have a 5 minute, or how about 10 minute?
10 minutes.
recess?
Go ahead and have a second on it.
We're recording.
Okay, we're back in session. We're now into the committee reports. Susan, interior design.
All right. I don't know if my microphone will work that way or not. One of the things that I presented at the committee meeting is the update on the NCIDQ exam, all the changes with the different sections that they have now, and the fundamentals exam portion. So I don't think I gave one to you, Wilson, because you weren't here at the time, but there's been a lot of updates, and it points out the health, safety, and welfare portions of each part of the exam, so I wanted to let y'all know the changes and the updates that have been made on that. One of the other recommendations I would like to make is that, as a board, we send a letter to all the schools, architecture, engineering, design, that we not allow the terminology of interior architecture to be used to name the programs. We don't recognize that as a profession. It has started across the country, but no one has an exam, and so I think we need to nip it in the bud before it gets started here. So, let's see, I think I had one other thing. We've talked about the wall certificate to death, and the other part is the grants committee, so that's my report.
Okay, landscape architectural committee. Oh, that's me. John.
Do we need to have a board motion, do you think, to approve sending letters on behalf of the board to the schools about interior architecture?
I so moved that we send a letter that there is no such thing as interior architecture, and there's no test for that.
Is that what you're, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I mean, we've talked about landscape art. Most of the people were in here, and they basically talked about the meeting and the wall certificate. We don't really, I mean, we're okay with the reduction if that's, you know, complies with everything, and all the other groups. So our committee didn't have any real changes to the rules that were proposed. So I guess that's the end of my report. Architects Committee.
Our
Chairman is not here.
Yep, he is.
Do we want to go on to? We'll go on to the Engineers Committee.
Okay, briefly, we had several items, some of which will be taken up again in the December meeting. One topic was supervision for applicants in industry, and we re-reviewed the NCAAS recommendation for such as it relates to direct supervision by a PE for candidates in industry, and so we will be contemplating that as we reach the December meeting to make some final determinations, but we are currently following that practice. Commissioning was discussed. Ricky, do you mind sharing with everyone what our decision was on commissioning?
We feel like commissioning does contain elements of that require a professional engineer. A lot of the activities are very similar to design, in that it takes a complete understanding of systems and concepts to function as a commissioning agent. There's certainly tasks in providing commissioning services that don't require PE. A lot of the tasks, and that's similar also to design, so that a technician can do, but we feel like a registered professional is needed to oversee providing commissioning services to potential clients. And so we feel like at this point, we want to find out where the other states are on that, because we think that we would be at the forefront if we require this, but think that it makes a lot of sense to do that and see some parallels with fire protection design and how that all came about.
And both the commissioning,
I got a question on that. What a commissioning agent, what are their educational requirements that call a commissioning agent, or certified or registered or whatever they are?
I think right now it's all over the map. You know, if you ask the Association of Building Commissioning, they would give you an answer. I saw an answer in writing that was a little confusing. I couldn't understand whether it was a 4-year BS or a high school degree. I wasn't sure what I was seeing there, but I don't know of any requirement right now.
So if I just wanted to call myself a commissioning agent, I'm a commissioning agent?
I believe all of them, there is some language about you need to have had experience working on commissioning before you can call yourself a commissioning agent. You know, I guess working for somebody who's providing commissioning. But I don't know of an authority that has a definite list of education requirements. I think there's some language in there about having a science background.
and we are taking, I'm sorry.
Just a question, I don't disagree with you, but what do we have to do to make that a requirement?
Well, as Ricky pointed out, John is going to petition the other MBEs to find out what other states, just for us to consider.
Right.
And then we're going to take it up again in the December meeting, and we would invite you all to join us if you can.
Well, I'm
for
just
the
curious,
discussion.
is that a rule change or a law change, or what is that? How does it impact us as a board?
It would be
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We talked about that. The NCEES model rule includes commissioning in its definition of engineering.
Okay.
And we talked about yesterday that we really don't have a definition of engineering for our rules and policies, wherever the right place for that may be.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about developing something like that, and that commissioning would be included in a definition of engineering.
Thank you.
But we would invite you, any board member, to participate in the discussion. We certainly would benefit from that.
But the commissioning affects all of us from a lead standpoint, and typically,
that was brought up too.
Typically, we have our commissioning agents are engineers. Well, I've never used one that wasn't. So I didn't realize that you could do it without being an engineer. Thank you.
Wilson. Well, that was partly my question. My education, what y'all are saying, I think, is there is a world out there of companies that identify themselves and sell themselves as someone that you could hire to do the commissioning work of a completed project that are not architects or engineers. I had no idea.
And as it relates, again,
architecture
to the public health and safety aspect of it, and that's our consideration for that. So,
okay, Jerome.
Okay. Just following up on from what Wilson is saying and what you're saying, Ricky. So, if they're using the term commissioning to provide engineering services to the public, they are selling, but they are basically selling engineering services. And it would be like me going out saying to a potential client, my fee is this, and it covers structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil, so on. And I don't have any engineering background in structural, so on. I'm misrepresenting myself, and I'm selling myself, I'm trying to sell services that I'm not licensed to perform. And that's what commissioning is. I don't, it turned, to me, it's a very gray and misleading term. And the public will misinterpret that and will end up, and God forbid that we end up having a building failure, and it all boils down to non-professionals providing services. I'd stay away. I would, by all means, stay away from that. Not recognize it.
Well, we've obviously already recognized it as commissioning being part of something we consider engineering. I think what we're attempting to do is understand where those lines may be, and I'll give you just a quick example. A guy that would come over and balance my heat and air unit, that's sort of a commissioning thing, but I wouldn't expect him to be an engineer. I mean, he may come over and close a few vents and do a few things. But if he's coming up with a plan, what should you measure? What should the flow? What should this? What should that? All the different variables. I would expect that to be an engineer, but I think that's what Ricky and our committee have said. Those lines, we need to make sure we understand where those lines are, and John's going to get us some more information, but hopefully we'll come back in December with a little bit better understanding of where we are, because there are things that a commissioning agent, a non-PE, probably can perform, just like there are things a technician can do or an inspector on a roadway project can do, absent an engineering oversight. But we need to, for the protection of the health safety, understand where those functions or those things are, so we don't fall in the trap. And we're catching it on the front end, which is good, and hopefully we can kind of put that back together pretty quick.
Well, I just want to remind the board that many years ago we fought the same battle when this company, or energy solution company, that came along and called themselves the CEM, Certified Energy Manager, or the CE, called the Certified Energy Engineers. And most of them, when they get those designations, they're not necessarily a 4-year degree engineer. Most of them are technicians and hands-on. And they go around and tell people, you need to change this kind of light bulb, and next thing they're asking is designing basically the airflow in the room. So I think commissioning is another great area that I do not disagree with what Jerome said earlier, that we just need to stand up on the front end and just say this is what we will do. And that's what I think that's the committee is trying to do, to catch it on the front end if we can. Thank you.
Okay, interesting topic. So we'll have more on commissioning clearly. So another issue we took up for discussion was just to remind ourselves of the cooperative experience of candidates that are applying for licensure. We do accept and encourage cooperative experience, but there are requirements, 3-semester minimum. We do have candidates at times that present internships as experience, but that under our statute is not allowed. So we did revisit that and reestablished our practice on that. We also discussed the potential for allowing engineers to sit for the PE exam before completing the experience requirement, as is our current law. So other jurisdictions are also contemplating it. NCWS passed it, as John has reported. And the big deal for us on that is mobility of our registrants. And it applies to all our professions here. So again, we're going to be taking that up in December, because if we make any changes, it will require a statute change, and it's not just something we can arbitrarily do. So we will be discussing that if anyone has any input for us as it relates to that topic. I will say, currently the engineering committee recommends that we do this, but we want to certainly be sensitive to our licensees, because we have received some feedback, and Ms. Toller is familiar with some through her representative agencies on this topic. So again, we will consider it again in December. The wall certificate design, we agreed with the modification, and as far as we know, the staff is moving forward with that. We did have interviews with some applicants and reviewed applications, and that went well, and we are going to communicate back to the applicant that came in for the interview, details of which might be in minutes somewhere. And most of our needs was referred to the Law and Rules Committee, which I'll defer to the Honorable Rick Thompson when he makes his report. So, engineers, was there anything else we need to bring up from our committee meeting?
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
We'll go back to the architectural committee.
It'll be very brief. As I alluded to earlier, our issue that we addressed, the big issue, was under tab 3, the letter of undertaking in respect of the mutual recognition agreement between NCARB and CALA. Item number 4 is where we have a little bit of a issue. It restricts our ability to request additional information. So John is going to communicate that back to NCARB and let them know that as the letter states currently, we can't sign it. Is that correct, John? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if we can modify item number 4. One thing about that, John, I've read it again, the last sentence, however, the authority may impose familiarity with local laws and other local requirements that apply to all domestic applicants seeking reciprocal licensure. That's kind of vague, but that may allow us to request some additional information, but I don't know. So I'll leave that in your hands. So that's our report. Unless, gentlemen, you have anything else to add? Thank you.
Now, Law and Rules Policy Committee.
Law and Rules. I'm going to have to ask Hal, what were you referring to in regard to the Law and Rules that you want to be referring?
Well, we referred, let's see, it's attached. Give me a moment. If you go to the others, I'll bring up.
Tab 1, yeah.
Tab 1.
Okay,
thanks. I've got it electronically.
Just wasn't sure what you wanted me to report on. I mean, I've got my notes here from our discussion, but I want to make sure I address whatever you...
One was submittals by a registrant, Mr. Joe Carson, PE.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, if you'll look at tab 1, just want to make sure I was clear on what we're going to talk about. 0120-02-02, proper conduct of practice. We made some potential revisions on there, and I think, John, you're going to get back to us on that. Item 2. When you get, if the registrant becomes aware of a decision taken by an employer, client, or contractor against registrant's advice, which violates applicable federal, state, or local laws and regulations, and we added "and codes" to that, which may affect adversely the HSW of the registrant shall, and then item A, go to a report the decision to the authority having jurisdiction instead of the local building inspector or other public official. And then we added "and codes" to the end of that, and I believe we're going to add that language to each one of those that it affects. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that'll be consistent throughout that change. Page 1, the next page. The amended rule, proper conduct, that's what we're talking about. We're revising that. The second bullet point, we did not agree with that, so that's going to be a no on that one. The third bullet point, we don't think that's enforceable. That we don't know how. So we can't do that if it's not enforceable. We don't have any teeth, so we're not going to do that. The fourth bullet point, we agree with that. And then all professions, as far as the Mississippi Architectural Board rules, we like the language. We're okay with that. John's going to wordsmith that a little bit to tailor it to Tennessee, so we're not plagiarizing it necessarily. So, and I believe that was it in regard to the Law and Rules Committee meeting, unless anyone else has something that I overlooked.
Question as a matter of practice or protocol. So once these changes or suggestions are made, then what is the next step?
Eventually it'll lead to a rulemaking hearing, so yeah, okay. You'll be voting on the specific language of the hearing notice, and then of course approving the rules at a hearing. So, and we'll have to decide if we have enough changes to proceed with the hearing for next year, or do we want to wait maybe a year until we have additional changes to add? So we'll have to make that decision.
We've usually had enough every year.
Will that determination be made at the December meeting?
Yeah, you can. Okay. Yeah, because we can present some draft language.
See what legislation.
Yeah, that's true.
On page 1, that fourth bullet about the use of another registrant seal, we already got that covered in our, I was glancing through, I'm not going to have to go back through and look, but in our, under the penalties, our civil penalties thing, there is a category about use of another registrant seal.
Well, my statement was that we are okay with that statement because we've got it covered.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I'm sorry, I didn't make that clear.
Yeah.
Mr. Cobb, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
John, you're not chair yet.
Not yet. Not for a year.
My understanding was at the end of the discussion that you were okay with Rob drafting something that would cover that specific circumstance, because that specific situation is not directly
That's true.
addressed.
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, I think that's...
We have a broad statement.
You're okay with the concept.
The concept of drafting some additional language.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
This, I don't know if this falls under law and rules, and it probably does not. Obviously, we had the discussion about amending the law and rules to take the gender-specific stuff out last time. And I would, if we're going to do that, which I'm okay with doing, and the reason I voted against it last time, I just thought we were doing it a piecemeal thing, and we hadn't had a chance to look at it on a comprehensive level. And are we going to try to take those references out and put those in so they're not awkward, the wording by the registrant, or whatever we end up putting in?
Yeah.
So are we going to try to do that for our entire law and rules next time, or is that going to be something? Yeah.
Yeah, we could include that. You know, that would definitely give us enough for a rulemaking hearing, I would say, if we wanted to go through all of the rules, the chapters. Yeah, the 6 chapters. Well, the last is firms. It probably didn't apply to that one, but yeah.
And again, just for the record, I didn't think it was a bad idea to do that, but I didn't think that it was a good idea to do it for small sections if you weren't going to go through and make sure that everything flowed and everything worked correctly.
Right.
And you leave sentences in there that you don't intend that are open, and leave things open. And so we had made a discussion at last meeting that we were going to take the gender references out for the entire law and rules, and I didn't know if that was something we were contemplating now. So it sounds like we may be.
I support that notion that we amend the rules. I don't know if we want to get into the laws necessarily.
Well, we can't get into the laws.
Okay, so if there's a reference in the laws, I don't think we need to deal with that. I think our rules would be significant enough that, we would be politically correct in adjusting that.
I was just curious, does the legislature, did they ever go through and change every one of their codes to?
I don't think so.
Is there not a general rule or statement we can pass that handles this without having to rewrite or retype and everything, every rule? I mean, I understand the deal, I'm for that. I'm just trying to find a simpler way, or asking, is there a simpler way to?
Statutes are drafted to where you can write, replace this with this wherever it appears.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
And that's what I was trying to think, if maybe I could talk to the AG or somebody, or Secretary of State, and see if we could do that with a chapter. I'd still have to go back and physically change everything.
No, I do that.
But maybe I wouldn't have to read everything. Yes.
John? Oh, there is one action that would require a vote. That's the repeal of the revisions prepared by a prior registrant policy. That's at the end of what's behind tab 1. that last item under potential policy changes for discussion. I think y'all agreed with repealing that because that language is now in the SEALS rules, so we no longer need the policy. So.
Repeal revisions to plans prepared by prior resolution.
We don't need it in 2 places, so.
So moved.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a second? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Next on the agenda is grants to higher education.
Well, the committee would like to recommend that we accept all 17 applications for the amount of money, with the exception of 3 schools that will need to submit additional information for expenditures over what they requested. The committee would also like to recommend that we consider paying $100 per average graduate toward their examination registration fees. And I have attempted to get information from everyone. I still like to, so I've averaged them out. And we have, on average, 60 interior design students, 79 architecture students, 962 engineering students, and 8 landscape students, on average, that graduate each year between all of the schools. So if we took $100 each and added a little bit more for, give or take, it's $115,000 that we could take out of reserve funds to use. And if we don't use the reserve funds, they're going to take it away from us. So that is our recommendation.
We need 2 actions. So the first action is accepting the grant applications. Do I have a, so you've made that recommendation?
I make that recommendation.
Okay, that, we're moving. John, do you want to have a discussion?
Well, we can't take money directly out of reserves. The department's never been able to figure out how to spend directly from reserves. So, yeah, that part I don't think we could accomplish, but as far as including it in the grants, I mean, that's certainly feasible.
Of the grant applications that we've got, only Union allowed for 12 students to pay their exam fees, and then one other college used $500. That was Tennessee State University for examination preparation materials. So the rest of them all use money for equipment, which is not a bad thing.
I believe we've got a motion and a second, but I would like to just talk about the motion a little bit. Obviously, that comes under Finance Committee, and if that was a motion to send that to the Finance Committee as a recommendation to review and look at, I would feel more comfortable because we need to look at some other things besides just that one thing to see where monies may or may not be available, sustainability of being able to pay for the program long term, possibly raising the grant amounts. There are a lot of things that will factor into that decision, so that would just be my caution.
Okay. But the first motion is only for the grants being
accepted.
Accepted.
Okay, I thought both of them were together. I'm sorry.
No, just that's the first one.
Okay.
Did you?
No, that was my question.
Okay.
No, I want a discussion for my next after this.
Okay. So we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the grants being
In the amount of $300,000.
Okay, $300,000. Do you have any other discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now, the second.
The second recommendation is to give an average of $100 for average student graduation per profession to help with their examination based upon them passing the exam and being reimbursed. Okay. I don't think we need to hand it out. I think they need to earn it. So.
Okay. And then that you're probably making a recommendation to the Finance Committee.
Right.
So it's really no need a motion.
No, she's just making that recommendation. Yes, sir.
We fought hard as a board to get money for the grant. We are aware today is very admirable to administration. John and his staff have done a good job for us to go. We started with 175,000. Today we're right at 300,000. We used to only include just the public school, now it's private school. I think going forward, because it's the first year we have got to 300,000, and also with the economic situation, and also with the private school getting involved, be wise and prudent for us to at least wait for another year to see how it is, how we flow on this. Because I sure hate for the administration to come back and say, hey, look, you guys keep asking, and then we look at the way things are, that you guys are handling, thinking that you got a deep pocket. Then they're going to start to micromanage us. So far, they've been pretty good to us. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. Just to share, yesterday the engineers met with a few students, and granted there weren't a lot of students there, but the feedback that we got consistently from those that attended was concern over the raise in cost of the test, the FE exam particularly. And some even had suggested that they probably wouldn't take it because the cost of the exam was equivalent to a month's rent or something that. And we talked to them and impressed upon them, and then ultimately those that again expressed those concerns understood the long-term benefit of having their license. But in the exchange, we asked what they felt like would be, at least through a transitional period, a reasonable amount for a candidate to expend for their licensure path. And we got back 100 to 150. So part of, I guess, what the Finance Committee will take under advisement, if there is a mechanism by which to establish some potential allotment for either through the grant or any other mechanism, I just want to raise the consciousness that that's what we heard from engineering students yesterday, that if there was some consideration, at least through a transitional period, they would certainly, they believe that their peers would be more likely to electively take the exam. So.
Okay. Yes, Rick. Did you say 150,000?
No, 115.
115,000. Okay.
And I just averaged it up, you know.
Okay.
Because some years there may be more, some years there may be less.
So that would be approximately a third of what we have to allocate.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with Philip. I think we probably ought to mull that one over.
And I know we can't do it right away.
And I agree with what John said yesterday. Is if we keep going back to the trough, you know, where do they say no?
Well, we also have the option of taking that money and saying you need to use X amount per student for graduation. So that's an option as well.
Yes.
Just as a point of information, the number of engineering candidates for the state that you calculated, was that all disciplines? Was that all?
Yes,
okay.
all disciplines.
And just, I think everyone's aware, the bulk, like at Tech and many of the schools, civils are required to sit in some cases, not pass, but they have to sit for the exam. So a portion of that number of engineers are mandated, I guess I'll say, to sit for the exam and go through that expense. I just want to raise that consciousness.
Which I forgot to add, that when the grant came about, we want to benefit the school population as a whole, not just to single out a few. So when you start doing that, you start cherry picking. Well, because you require to take tests, so we fund it. What about people who don't take the test? Because that's not a problem with UT Martin. They require all the students to take it, to pass it before they issue their certificate. So that's fair enough. But I think I agree with Rick. We just need more people over with this situation. I'm just a little bit uneasy about it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay.
Well, we're now in, there's no other motions. Let's see, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met yesterday. You've heard the report. We've had the slight change I think John made in the one category. We're progressing well. Financially looking good. The Finance Committee will take that under advisement at our next meeting, whenever that's supposed to be. I'm relatively new to this, but we will take that under advisement. One of the things that we still want to continue to look at in regards to this FE, my guess is if NCAAS sees a larger than expected drop in the number of students taking this over the next year or so, hopefully they'll be a little bit more amenable to some other solutions that we have to help reimburse students like we have in the past. And I don't wish the test ill, but I just see that there are potential problems that they have not thought about when the rubber hits the road. So we ask that, and we don't have a motion because you've already presented the financial report. So John's financial report was already read into the record, so we're fine with everything that's going on. I'll entertain any questions.
Questions? Let's move on to licensure. Publication, I'm sorry.
I think the chair's absent.
Steve.
Yeah, he's absent. But that I know they only had one motion, and that's to accept revisions to the Consumer's Guide, which is behind tab, where is that? One of the tabs.
10.
10.
They were, he made what, for all the changes that were.
Yeah, pretty minimal, but.
Can someone make a motion on that?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Licensure outreach was a very quick meeting. We need to provide a little bit more emphasis on getting to students, not only in the college ranks, which I think a lot of the different members of the board are going out and meeting with a lot of the students, but actually getting into the high schools and even grammar schools to start discussing the professions with these other groups. So I think that we're going to try to probably come up with a program that we may be able to use for outreach in the different areas, and the board members that may be able to assist, and some of the professional societies, which I think has some of these things in there. But there's no motion required, but just as an aside, we do need to kind of keep out and make licensure and the professions available to the students. Yes, sir, Philip.
Mr. Chair, I visited with previously with the Associate Dean of UT Knoxville, Dr. Masood was up here, and one of the things that he gave some ideas I thought was pretty good idea. The way UT structured the program these days, kids comes in before you start any engineering program. You have to take what I call a fundamental engineering fundamental EF 151, 152. I'm wondering whether at that time the board should invite ourselves into those classroom meetings. They usually have about 300, 400 students. Every engineering student has taken 2 class courses. Perhaps just maybe do a 15 minutes presentation and an outreach. Or also work with the college, since we have contact with all the dean now, to actually have the dean submit the list of all the new freshman engineering students, that we can personally write them a letter. Perhaps then send them a little gift, like a sticker, or maybe a brochure, something like that. That we used to do, give out t-shirts kind of thing. So they know, hey, I'm going in engineering, this is what I'm looking ahead. Because you know what, we always start thinking about that when they get into junior, it's almost too late. That's the thought that I can take credit for it, but I thought Dr. Masood had some good idea when he visited last time.
Good idea. Anything else? On to continuing education.
The continuing education committee met. There's nothing really to report. There was some discussion, I think, with the engineering group over how you keep up with the continuing education and what information you keep to have a record to be able to present to the board so they can review and say whether you've met your continuing education requirements or not. Past that, we really don't have any other thing to report.
Okay.
But, yes.
It's just one comment to reinforce what Frank just said, is that the architects have a kind of a leg up on the CEs, because we report, if you're a member of AIA, they keep your hours just so everyone will understand what we're talking about. But the engineers have got to do that themselves, and that's where the rub is, and Ricky was talking about the hours that they report without, documentation of certain areas they attended in a conference, for example. So it's kind of convoluted. We're lucky with AIA. I just want to say that, I know you guys got to struggle with that.
Anything else in continuing education? General discussion of future plans, actions, or items discussed.
Mr. Chairman, and John too, what will be the follow-up from our strategic planning session that we had yesterday?
I think, John, I think we're going to try to put some of that information together. He was going to put out a survey that would actually let the board members list in priority, though I think there was like 10 or 12 items that we came up with, and put your priorities on those items, and then we will, get that back into John's hands, and then we can kind of rank what those tasks or issues, for mega issues, would be, and then discuss that at our December meeting.
Yeah, that'll be on the December agenda, to discuss.
To further discuss those items, and then we can then pick, maybe one of those top 3 for discussion at the meeting, and then pick one of them to really further go for someone to write a white paper on those issues, so that then we can take it to the next step.
I know John is going to do this. He's going to sign a letter to the dean here to thank him for the hospitality.
No.
Yes. But I think it would be a little bit more personal coming from our chair too.
It would, yes.
This one. I did it to you.
Okay.
We just want your John Doe.
All right, just John Doe.
Yes, you just have to sign it.
Okay. You'll write it. Thank you. Yeah. Is there anything else? General discussions? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
This board is over.
Great meeting.
Good meeting, yes.